Let's get started with our first major story. Israel Adesanya is officially open to a rematch with Paulo Costa. Now, if you've been following the middleweight division for the past few years, you'll remember these two first clashed back in 2020 at UFC 2. At the time, it was one of the most anticipated title fights of the year, but things didn't go the way Costa had hoped. Adesanya dominated the fight, showcasing his superior striking and finishing Costa with a TKO in the second round. It was a clinical performance that made it clear Izzy was on another level. Since then, both fighters have had their ups and downs. Adesanya, of course, went on to defend his belt multiple times and became one of the biggest stars in the UFC. Costa, meanwhile, has had a more turbulent journey, struggling with weight cuts, fight cancellations, and inconsistent performances. But now, it looks like the door is open for a second chapter between the two. Recently, Adesanya expressed interest in running it back with Costa. What's interesting is that he's been pretty vocal about wanting a rematch with Sean Strickland, the man who shocked the world by defeating him and taking his title. But according to Izzy, Strickland doesn't seem too interested in fighting him again, and that's opened the door for another option. Speaking about his current mindset and return to training, Adesanya said, "I sparred with Kamaru in Miami when Alexander Volkanovski got his belt back. That was my first sparring back. I took some time out to just, chill and let the brain relax." It's worth noting that this time away from the octagon seems to have helped him recenter. Adesanya has always been very transparent about mental health and the importance of not rushing back into competition when the body and mind need rest. But now, he's fired up again. He continued, "I just knew straight away. I've been Aichi for a while, bro. I'm ready to go." That's the kind of energy that tells you he's not just looking for any fight, he wants a meaningful challenge, a story, a reason to make a statement. And when asked specifically about a potential rematch with Costa, Adesanya didn't hesitate. "I don't have to say much, I'd be like, cool, alright, that sounds fun, and give him a chance at redemption like people have done for me as well." That last line is important. Adesanya is a fighter who understands legacy. He knows that the MMA world loves redemption arcs, and he's willing to give Costa that shot. A chance to prove he's more than just a one-sided loss in the highlight reel of Izzy's career. As for Strickland, Adesanya kept it simple. If he wants to fight, sure. If not, it's alright. That tells you everything. Adesanya isn't desperate, he knows his worth. He's been to the top and plans to get back there, whether it's Costa, Strickland, or someone else standing in front of him. So now the question is, who steps up first? Before moving to the next news, we have one quick request for you. We're constantly working on improving our content to earn your love and support. That's why we truly appreciate it if you could take just a moment to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Now let's move on to one of the most anticipated matchups of the year, Khamzat Chimaev versus Dricus du Plessis at UFC 319. This fight is just 10 days away, and it's already being called one of the most unpredictable title bouts in UFC history. On one side, the champ is riding an 11-fight win streak, and on the other, Chimaev is the undefeated monster finally getting his first title shot. Both camps have been making waves in the media. Chimaev has been training hard at the Training Lab, a facility famous for pushing fighters' cardio and endurance, and that's no accident. Everyone knows Chimaev's biggest weakness has been his gas tank. If he can fix that, he becomes even more dangerous. Meanwhile, du Plessis hasn't been holding back either. He's been sending literal death threats toward Khamzat, saying he plans to end him inside the octagon. Then we have insights from fighters who've actually trained with them, something far more valuable than casual fan predictions. Reinier de Ridder, who's rolled with both fighters, is backing du Plessis. Caio Baia, a man who spent significant time with Chimaev, is also picking du Plessis to win. That's surprising, given his time with Chimaev. Then there's Nordine Imavov, who trained with Khamzat and was originally believed to be the backup for this fight. He finally addressed the rumors and made his UFC 319 prediction. According to Imavov, after I beat Adesanya, the only thing I had in mind was fighting for the belt, but I found out the UFC had already promised it to Khamzat before my fight even happened. So instead, they offered me the backup spot. I accepted it, but let's be clear, I didn't want to be anyone's backup. I wanted my face on the poster. Then the fight got delayed from June to August. That was too long. Imavov said, I wasn't going to waste a full camp just hoping someone pulls out. That's the only reason Caio is now the backup. He's just taking my leftovers. If I didn't decline, he wouldn't even be in the conversation." He added, "To be honest, nobody remembers the backup after the fight happens. No one talks about them." As for his prediction, I think Khamzat finishes Du Plessis in the first 2 rounds, but I get why people think Drius has a chance if it goes long. His style is AW awkward and his cardio is strong. Still, I believe Chimaev ends it early. But honestly, I don't care who wins. The only thing I care about is that belt. Now, moving on to a debate that's really heating up. Will Paddy Pimblett become a bigger star than Ilia Topuria? It's a question that's dividing fans, analysts, and even some former fighters. Sure, Ilia Topuria has made massive strides in the UFC. His undefeated record, dominant performances, and undeniable confidence have made him a superstar in Spain. The guy is so popular that when he walked out to his fight song at a concert recently, the entire crowd sang along. That's not just support, that's an army of fans rallying behind their champion. But here's the twist. Former UFC heavyweight Brendan Schaub thinks there's someone who could be even bigger than Ilia. His pick? Paddy the Baddy Pimblett. According to Schaub, Paddy has something that Ilia doesn't, something you can't teach, something called the IT factor. He said, and I quote, "Paddy the Baddy has the IT factor. When he walks in, you can feel it. He knows all his angles, all his cameras. He's got charisma and skill. That presence, that energy, it's what separates stars from superstars." Paddy's wild hair, his thick Liverpudlian accent, and his fearless mic work make him magnetic. Whether you love him or hate him, you're watching. And Schaub wasn't done. On a recent episode of his podcast, he doubled down, saying, "That guy drips with star power. That's why the UFC is putting him in this position. If he beats Ilia, buddy, you've got your next Conor." Now that is a statement. The next Conor McGregor? That's not a comparison you make lightly. Conor changed the sport from PPV sales to global reach, and while Schaub admits we'll never get another Conor, he believes the closest thing we might see is Paddy if he can become champion. And here's where things get really interesting. As of now, the UFC has not officially announced who gets the next shot at the lightweight title. But with the rising tension and genuine beef between Pimblett and Topuria, it's entirely possible that the UFC sets up a massive showdown between them. And if that happens, if Paddy jumps the line and beats Ilia, the world might just be looking at its next megastar. Paddy's appeal stretches far beyond just hardcore fight fans. He's got viral potential, he's been on talk shows, he's got sponsorship deals, and he knows how to work a crowd. He's a showman, and in today's fight game, that matters. Ilia may have the skills to dominate the division, but Paddy? He might have the charisma to take over the sport. So the question remains, do you want a killer in the cage or a superstar on the mic? Because if Paddy becomes champ, he's not just fighting for gold, he's fighting to become a global icon. Now let's talk about the controversy surrounding Daniel Cormier. DC, a UFC Hall of Famer, commentator, and one of the most respected voices in MMA, recently found himself in hot tea water with fans over a bold suggestion he made on his podcast. He pitched an idea that shocked a large part of the MMA community. Cormier proposed that the UFC should close out the year with an all-women's card, headlined by not one but two massive super fights. According to DC, the card should feature Amanda Nunes versus Kayla Harrison and Valentina Shevchenko versus whoever makes sense, possibly a top contender from flyweight or bantamweight. On his podcast, Cormier passionately said, "Let's end the year with a bang. Amanda, Kayla, Valentina, go all-female in December." He clearly meant well. He wanted to shine a light on some of the sport's most dominant women, but the reaction from the MMA community was swift and brutal. Many fans didn't hold back. One person on X wrote, "An all-women's card to end the year is insane. It would be the worst idea business-wise and cost UFC millions." Another chimed in, "Respectfully, no one's going to watch if it's just women's fights." While the UFC has built some iconic women's moments like Ronda Rousey's rise, Nunes versus Cyborg, or Welly versus Joanna, many fans felt that an entire card featuring only women, especially for the year-end event, just wouldn't deliver the same buzz as a traditional stacked card with both men and women. Some fans did show support. One said, "I'm a true fan. I'd watch. I'm very interested in Amanda's return." Another said, "If the matchups are right, I'll be watching," but the overwhelming majority weren't sold. One brutally honest comment said, "Unless there's a cross-promotion with Cyborg, Pacheco, or even Jermaine Durandame, this card just won't sell. The UFC doesn't have the women's roster for that kind of spectacle." Others echoed similar concerns, saying the women's divisions lack the depth and star power to carry a full pay-per-view, especially at the end of the year, a time when the UFC typically goes big with massive cards, like New Year's or UFC 300 level events. And then there were fans who were downright cynical. If this isn't free on ESPN or ABC, it's gonna be the lowest purchased pay-per-view in UFC history. So now the question remains, was DC just shooting for the stars with a progressive idea, or was this suggestion totally disconnected from what the fan base wants? Would an all-female card be a bold, groundbreaking move for women's MMA, or a massive financial flop? It's clear the idea has sparked a passionate debate, and if nothing else, it shows that conversations about women's representation in MMA are far from over. What do you think? Should the UFC roll the dice and give women the spotlight for a full night, or should they stick to the formula that fans are used to? Let us know in the comments. Now for some absolutely shocking and brutally honest words from the legendary Khabib Nurmagomedov. During a recent press conference, Khabib made a powerful statement that has the MMA world buzzing. He said he believes Islam Makhachev, the current UFC lightweight champion, has only about 1.5 to 2 years left before he should step away from the sport for good. Let that sink in. Khabib explained his reasoning by saying, "It's better to leave the sport before the sport leaves you." He wasn't just talking about Islam, he was talking about the brutal truth of every fighter's career. He said Islam will be 34 years old this October, and that in his view, fighters should start thinking about the end long before others do. He said, "You have to understand, this is a young man's sport. After 35, you shouldn't be fighting anymore." That's a heavy statement, especially coming from someone who retired undefeated at 29-0. Khabib has always been a man of discipline, a man of principle, and when he speaks, people listen. But he didn't stop there. He went even deeper, saying that once a fighter passes his prime, it's no longer about legacy, it becomes about money, and that's where things start to get dangerous. According to Khabib, when you pass your prime, you don't fight for legacy anymore. You fight only for money. And then came the line that really hit home. In his usual no-filter style, Khabib said, "They knock you out 10 times for a paycheck, go and work as an Uber driver. That's better than being seasoned inside the cage." That's a brutally real statement. He's not mocking anyone. He's telling the truth about the dangers of chasing the sport after your body and mind have moved on. He added, "Allah gives you a prime. You must know when it ends. You have to finish before it finishes you." In other words, know your limits and respect the timing that God has given you. Khabib isn't just speaking as a former champion, he's speaking as someone who has seen what happens when fighters hang on for too long. We've all seen the legends who stayed past their peak, taking unnecessary damage, getting KO'd again and again, all while chasing one more payday or one more shot at glory. But Khabib's philosophy has always been different. He believes that walking away at the top is more powerful than staying too long. And that's the exact path he's now recommending for Islam Makhachev, a path of wisdom, honor, and self-respect. Whether or not Islam follows that timeline remains to be seen. But one thing's for sure, Khabib has made his stance crystal clear. And once again, he's changing the conversation in MMA. And finally, some shocking news that's been making waves in the Russian MMA community. Khamzat Chimaev reportedly got knocked out during a sparring session. That's right, multiple sources have confirmed that Rafael Fiziev dropped Chimaev with a wheel kick, and it sparked a lot of buzz across the MMA world. The revelation came straight from Fiziev himself during an interview with a Russian media outlet, and he wasn't just throwing shade, he gave details. Fiziev said, "I respect Khamzat a lot. He's a great fighter, but I gotta be honest, he has flaws in his movement. That shifting sidestep that his team always uses, it's not perfect. They drop their hands when they move laterally and they don't see the spinning strikes coming." According to Fiziev, this wasn't just a one-time mistake. He emphasized that Chimaev made the same mistake several times during their sparring session. He did it carelessly, Fiziev explained. He was relaxed, confident, but that made him vulnerable. I noticed it, and I knew I could catch him with a spinning kick, and eventually I did. Now here's where it gets even crazier. The incident apparently happened during a single-round sparring session, and sources like MMA Brotherhood, MMA Inquirer, and others quickly picked it up. These platforms have reported that Chimaev was legitimately dropped during his UFC 319 training camp, just weeks before his highly anticipated return. Of course, sparring knockouts do happen. Even elite fighters take damage behind closed doors. But with Chimaev's reputation for being an unstoppable force, this news came as a surprise to many. It's led to fans questioning if this is a sign of decline or simply a part of the normal grind in high-level training camps.
Let's not forget,
this news comes just days after Khabib Nurmagomedov made headlines with his emotional comments about Islam Makhachev's potential retirement. That's two of the most dominant names associated with Dagestani MMA making waves for very different reasons. So naturally, fans are starting to wonder, are these once invincible warriors finally beginning to show cracks? Or is this just the brutal nature of the sport we love? After all, even the best have off days, and sometimes it takes a wheel kick from someone like Fiziev to remind us that no one is untouchable in the octagon. Also worth noting, some fans believe the video might surface soon. If it does, it could either confirm Fiziev's claims or stir up even more debate, especially considering the heated rivalries and rising tensions in the UFC's welterweight division. For now though, all eyes are on UFC 319. Will this knockout in camp affect Chimaev's confidence or performance? Or will it fuel his hunger to come back even stronger and prove the doubters wrong? Let us know what you think. Is this a red flag for Chimaev, or just another day in the war zone that is elite MMA training?